three are members of the St. David Society of Pittsburgh board. And excuse me, I just have to, I saw Pembroke Child has joined us from State College. Great to have you on board, Pembroke. Anyway, the three panelists that we have today in order of presentation are Fred Long, as I mentioned to some of you already. Fred is joining us from his home in Aberystwyth, Wales today. That's the Ceredigion Bay behind you, right, Fred?
Yes, yeah, Cardigan Bay, yeah.
And he is going to be giving us an overall summary of the migration from Wales to Pennsylvania, starting with the Quakers in the late 18th century. Fred is the co-chair of the Wales, Pennsylvania project for the St. David Society. And then next, we're going to have Dale Richards. Dale is joining us here from Pittsburgh, and he's going to be focusing on migration to the southwestern Pennsylvania area.
Among other things.
And Dale is the co-chair of the Welsh Nationality Room for St. David Society, which of course, as most of you know, is located at the University of Pittsburgh. And myself, I'm the third panelist. I am the other co-chair of the Wales, Pennsylvania project, along with Fred. I'll be moderating today's session in so much as anyone can moderate a gathering of Welsh people. I will be trying to do that. And I often say what a moderator does is make sure that everybody that wants to have a chance to talk does have a chance to talk. So I will be paying attention to raised hands, questions in the chat box, etc. And in addition to that, I'll be the third presenter, and I'm going to be talking just a little bit about Welsh immigration to the northwestern Pennsylvania area. Now, I've mentioned a couple of others, but I want to particularly call out one of the very important people that's with us today, Jessica Skye Davies, because Jessica actually, she's the vice president of the St. David Society of Pittsburgh, and she has done basically, in my opinion, all of the work to set this discussion up today. She's going to be stick with us through the discussion, kind of watching over us to make sure things go as smoothly as can. And I just say thank you to you, Jessica, for being here. And it's I've said this before, it's very comforting to have you looking over us. And that's all I have for introductions. So with that, I will turn the floor over to Fred. Again, if everybody could mute their mics, and it looks like they are, except for Fred. Fred?
Okay, all right, Dave. So as Dave indicated, I'm going to give just a quick sort of overview of migration from Wales to Pennsylvania and a bit further afield. So my story, it really starts back in actually 1682, when, because of religious persecution in Wales at the time, a group of Welsh Quakers from the Bala area of North Wales, they met with William Penn and acquired an area of about 40,000 acres immediately to the west of Philadelphia. And that area became known as the Welsh Tract. And these Quakers, they emigrated to that area and set up farming communities. They were farmers, so they set up farming communities in that area. And then shortly following that, a group of Baptists also suffering religious persecution. The Baptists were from Mid and West Wales, and they followed to the same area. And emigration continued into that area. There was another wave of emigration from Montgomeryshire in Wales in about 1795. And of course, even today, there are quite a few Welsh place names in that area. Names like Bryn Mawr, North Wales, Gwynedd, Merion, Narberth, Bala-Cynwyd, Radnor, Berwyn, Haverford, Tredyffryn, and Uwchlan. all those, of course, Welsh place names in that Welsh tract. The Welsh Society of Philadelphia was formed in 1729. It's the oldest Welsh society in America. And incidentally, Dr. Richard Allen, who's a member of the Wales, Pennsylvania project, is working on a book of the minutes of the Welsh Society of Philadelphia. He's putting the finishing touches to that, and it should be published later this year. So that will be interesting to see the old minutes of the Welsh Society of Philadelphia. So that's where the Welsh started, but by 1795, they were looking to move further west in Pennsylvania, and the Reverend Morgan John Rees took a group of Welsh from the Welsh tract and moved west and set up a Welsh settlement at Beulah in west central Pennsylvania. And the settlement, it thrived for a short while, grew to about 60 houses with a church, a school, and a library. But the ground was not very fertile. And so by 1808, the community had moved to Ebensburg, which of course became the county seat of Cambria County. Again, these were farmers. They set up farming communities, and as more and more immigrants arrived from Wales, they spread even further west and into virtually all areas of Pennsylvania. And even, of course, further afield, some of them arrived in Pittsburgh, and they took rafts down the Ohio River and set up communities in Ohio. And 3 years ago, there was a 200th anniversary celebration of a group who, in 1818, 36 people from the village of Penn, which is about 15 miles south of Aberystwyth here, they left Aberystwyth, which is a small harbour about 18 miles south of here, and they sailed across the Atlantic, arrived in Baltimore, and then travelled overland to Pittsburgh, and then took rafts down the Ohio River, intending to join a Welsh community in Cincinnati. But they overnighted on the banks of the Ohio, and a storm blew up and blew their rafts away. And so they set up a community in Gallia County, Ohio. But also people sailed even from Aberystwyth. There's a poster in the Aberystwyth Museum, and I'll read a part of what this poster says. You can also find it online. And it says, to parties desirous of emigrating to America, 1848. The good brig Credo of Aberystwyth, John Humphrey's master, will sail from that port, weather permitting, on the 4th of April next, and will take passengers upon the following terms and conditions. Adults, 14 years of age and upwards, £3 with 5 shillings head money. Children, 1 year and under 14 of age, £1 10 shillings with 2 shillings and 6pence head money. Infants under 12 months free. Passengers to find their own provisions, etc., and the ship will find water, fuel, and bed places. Now, both Aberystwyth and Aberystwyth are very small harbours. A brig is a 2-masted sailing vessel, so it's not a very big vessel at all. You can see people were taking this quite perilous journey, even from small harbours on the west coast of Wales over to America. So those early immigrants, as I said, were farmers, but most people perhaps associate Welsh immigration with mining and coal and iron and steel workers. And indeed, in the first half of the 19th century, South Wales was a very important area for coal mining and iron and steel. And in fact, Merthyr Tydfil in South Wales was the iron and steel capital of the world. But it began to lose its position from about 1850, when new manufacturing processes required a more pure form of iron ore than was available in the South Wales area. So there was a decline in the industry in South Wales, and so there was a surplus of skilled miners, foundrymen, and metal workers. And on the other hand, the mining and iron and steel industry in Pennsylvania was just expanding at that time. So there were obvious opportunities for these people, again, to emigrate from South Wales to Pennsylvania, first of all to the northeast area around Scranton, Wilkes-Barre, Danville, that sort of area. But later, of course, they went further west, and especially to Johnstown, Pittsburgh, and so forth. And you may note that quite close to Ebensburg, there's a town called Nantyglo, which of course is a Welsh name. Nantyglo literally means Valley of Coal. So there was a coal mining community, a Welsh coal mining community there near Ebensburg. I've been to Nantyglo, Pennsylvania. It's now a bit of a ghost town, but obviously once it was a very thriving community. And there's a little story which appeals to me in particular, to do with this sort of emigration. In 1853, one Daniel Parry left Merthyr Tydfil for Pennsylvania. And the following year, his wife and 4 of their children joined him in Danville, Pennsylvania. One of their sons at the time was 13 years old, and he started work in the rolling mills there. His name was Joseph Parry. As in all the Welsh communities, there were local Eisteddfodau, and Joseph began winning prizes with his musical compositions. In fact, he did so well at the Eisteddfodau in America that he was encouraged to enter some of his compositions in the Swansea Eisteddfod, South Wales, in 1863. And in fact, he won first prize. So then he was encouraged and financed by some of these Eisteddfodau in Pennsylvania to attend in person the National Eisteddfod in Aberystwyth in 1865. And to cut a long story short, he did so well, he became the first professor of music at the university here in Aberystwyth. And he wrote the tune Aberystwyth, which you may know. Also, he wrote the Welsh opera Blodwen. And that story was made into a film called Off to Philadelphia in the Morning. A similar sort of thing happened with the slate quarrying industry. That also boomed in the beginning of the 19th century, with the slate this time coming from northwest Wales, from Carnarvonshire and in the Snowdonia area. But again, by the middle of the century, the Welsh industry was in decline. There was also industrial unrest. The quarry owners started trying to cut the wages, and so again there was a surplus of quarrymen, and they emigrated again to North America, and particularly to Pennsylvania, to what is called the Slate Belt, which is about 50 miles northwest of Philadelphia. And again, you find Welsh place names. Bangor, Pennsylvania, took its name from the old Bangor Quarry, quarry, which was opened by Robert Morris Jones, who immigrated from Bethesda in Snowdonia. And there are other slate quarries in that area. For example, at Peters Creek, Lancaster County, Slate Hill, appropriately named, York County, and Slatington in Lehigh County. And although the first quarries were opened in the 1830s, by the first decade of the 20th century, Lehigh Valley produced about half of the slate quarried in the United States, mainly from quarries worked by Welsh immigrants. So that's a very quick overview of immigration into Pennsylvania from Wales, and I'll now hand back to Dave.
Okay, thank you very much, Fred. Just a reminder in between, if anybody has any questions now, feel free to put them in the chat box. It will be monitored, and we will get your questions answered during the open session that we'll have after a couple more presentations. And now I'd like to turn this over to Dale Richards, and Dale is going to talk more about the Western Pennsylvania region, immigration to, etc. Dale?
I'm going to talk more than that, if you don't mind.
Feel free, Dale.
Okay, let me just go back on some of Fred's thoughts and maybe do a couple little tidbits that I found out about William Penn, who was born in 1644. His father was Sir William Penn, a very noted, respected naval officer, an admiral in the Navy. This is a kind of a backstory, but what happened was in around 1670, his father died, and the Crown was obligated to pay William Penn and a large inheritance, but they couldn't pay in money. So what they did, they gave a charter to William Penn, and for a vast amount of land along the Delaware and Schuylkill rivers in Pennsylvania. William Penn wanted to name this New Wales, but the Crown shut him down, and they came up with Pennsylvania, excuse me, which means Penn's Woods. Imagine if William Penn didn't have that name, because it was a borrowed name, basically. What would have happened? Or what would have happened if the money wasn't there? What would happen to what is now Pennsylvania? Very, very interesting story. But as William Penn came along, it's stated that he designed the city of Philadelphia. And he sold land, and some of his folks sold land to different people. And some of these people were the rich Quakers who came over, and they bought up all the land. They were called the Ancient Britons. And among them were rich and educated people and ministers, religious leaders. And the land they bought was called the Great Valley, which is like 15 miles outside of Philadelphia. There's a lot of wooded area at the time. And the Great Valley had a lot of different townships formed: Radnor, Haverford, Radnor, Haverford, Marion. And then the area became very rich and prosperous. And over 100 years later, what happened? Most of the land was bought up and sold. The old English, or the old Welsh settlers, had died, and the children did not learn Welsh. So all this was lost. Even the Welsh churches, the English churches came in, and they encouraged the new immigrants from Wales to join their flock. And so what happened was a lot of these people moved west, or moved to Tennessee, or moved to Ohio and New York. And that's where the more land was becoming available to them. And this was from this time to the time in Pennsylvania in 1776, when the revolution started. The Welsh had an opportunity to increase in numbers and wealth and influence. They became merchants, lawyers, doctors, preachers, politicians. And after the revolution, they were more able to pay attention to their farming and to the other useful arts. So from then, like 1802 until like 1815, not too many people from Wales came over to immigrate over. And so in the 19th century, another thing happened in the Northeast. Anthracite coal, the coal mines. Wilkes-Barre, Scranton, this is where they were, all the big the groups. They dug coal that was very deep, unlike the Western coal, which is not as deep, the bituminous coal. And before the Welsh arrived, this hard coal had been dug by the Anglos. But as the people came, more people came, the Irish Catholics, the Welsh, other things. And but the Irish and the Welsh were the first ones in the area to arrive. And there were many miners occupied around the towns in the region. There were about 50 towns around that had little, they're probably coal patches, perhaps. They had the towns like, I have a whole list here, 5 Points, Columbia, Minersville, Tamaqua, Ashland, Mahoney City, Shenandoah, Centralia. All these towns had Welsh people in. They had Welsh churches. They had Welsh ministers. But over time, what happened was too many people in the coal fields. There were too many people. So they had to decide, are we going to stay, go back home, or are we going to move west? So that's what happened with the coal fields. They're still there, but not as frequent or plentiful. That was kind of like the second migration between 1840 and 1865. Now I'm thinking maybe the third migration took place in around the 1890s. And that's when the Welsh tin mills were in business. They had over 90 Welsh tin mills in the South Wales valleys. But over here in America, in 1890, William McKinley, who would later become president, he helped to set up or make law the 1890 tariff, the McKinley tariff, they called it. It was a tariff act that put tariffs on imports up to 70% coming in. So this kind of made a real blow to the tin mills in the valleys over in Wales. So some of them probably came over here. They were recruited because the American people were starting up their own tin mills. So they sent people over, agents, to recruit people to come over here in the tin mills. And so that's what happened up there. Because as you know, Wales was probably the biggest seller of tin plate in the world up until that time. My grandfather was a tinner. He came over in 1893, 1894, somewhere around there, to work in the tin mills. And I'm not sure how he got here, whether he was recruited or whether because of the recession over there in Wales, he came over. He brought his family, brought his wife and his daughter-in-law, or his wife's sister over, and he stopped in Blairsville, Pennsylvania. They had a tin mill. My father was born in Blairsville. He stayed there a couple of years. He moved out to Indiana, the state of Indiana, for another tin mill. I'm not sure he was recruited to go out there or not. But anyway, he spent a couple of years out there in a little town called Atlanta, Indiana. From there, he came back home to Sharon, Pennsylvania, where I was born, and lived there the rest of his life. So the tin mills were a big problem there in the 1890s. Okay, let's get back to, let's go back now. We want to talk about the city of Pittsburgh and Western Pennsylvania, which is a heavily populated Welsh area, from all the way from Erie down to the border of West Virginia and Maryland. The Welsh at the time in Pittsburgh numbered about 35,000 people. There were 6 or 7 or 8 Welsh churches in Pittsburgh at the time. The Druid newspaper was published from like 1913 to 1931. The American Gorsuch, which we'll talk about a little bit, had their headquarters in Pittsburgh. And I'll speak about this in a couple of seconds. We had 4 national Gamonbaganis, or we call them National Festival of Wales now in Pittsburgh, 1938, 1965, 1989, and 2009. And according to what I have found in a couple of things, the first St. David's Society in Pittsburgh was formed about 1881. So somebody said 1892, other people said maybe 1872. I'm not quite sure, but it was around that time that the society was formed. Being a religious group, the society of today would hold an annual banquet every March to honor St. David. Because there were so many Welsh back then, they would hold a banquet that was attended by at least 300 people, and they would have entertainment at the banquet after the dinner. And that was helped by another. They had a couple of different societies in Pittsburgh. One was called the St. David Benevolence Society. They would hold Christmas Eisteddfods every year, and these Eisteddfods would also attract thousands of people. Each church had their own chorus. Other parts of the town, or other towns like Homestead, they would have their chorus. They would come to the Eisteddfod and compete for prizes. And the prizes back then were maybe $50 or even as low as $5. And but they would hold these Christmas Eisteddfods every Christmas. They would be held at the old city hall at the time, and sometimes at the exposition center. That's now where the point is. So back in the 1880s and 1890s, the Welsh are very prevalent, as I said, 35,000 people perhaps. Maybe I'm doing research, I think I'm finding more Welsh churches. We have an intern that's doing a research study for us for the Welsh PA project about the Welsh churches, trying to find images, histories, etc. But and as the years progress, coming up into the 1900s, the Welsh would go to a different route. They would hold what they would call Welsh Days. These were large picnics held in Shenley Park in Pittsburgh. They would attract thousands of people. They would have events. They would have a baseball game. They would have races. They would have pony races, all kinds of things like this. And in the evening, speakers and entertainment. So this happened into the 1913, 14, 15 years. But as the years progressed, it kind of slipped, and maybe up into the 1950s when the societies kind of lost their steam. And I think it wasn't until maybe we had the Nationality Room formed that the society picked up again. But the one big event in Pittsburgh at the time, in July of 1913, was the National Eisteddfod, which was under the auspices of the American Gorsuch, which had its headquarters here in Pittsburgh. It formed in 1913. It kind of folded in 1946 because the Welsh language was not being spoken too much anymore, just like in the coal fields, just like over in Philly. uh, the Welsh language. The older folks didn't teach the young kids the language, so it just faded away. And but the American Gorset, it was 25,000 people at this, July 2nd through the 5th at the old Exposition Hall at Point State Park. And I'm going to ask this question, and maybe somebody in the chat can tell me what a gorset is. What is a gorset, and what does it do? And I'll explain it to you. So I have so many notes here of the happenings in Pittsburgh. You know, it's amazing, and I'm still going through stuff. So in a nutshell, that's what we have. So I'll stop there. I can go on and on. Thank you.
Thank you, Dale. That was a very good summary. Are you going to tell us what a Gorseth is, or are you going to wait for the open period?
I'll wait.
Okay. Okay. Let me get myself unmuted here. And so now we'll move on. Fred has taken us from Philadelphia westward across the state. Dale has elaborated on that and gotten us into the western portion of the state. And now I'm going to talk a little bit about the northwestern corner of Pennsylvania, Erie County. And I can't tell, other than my family, who I know is from Erie, is there anybody on here from Erie today? I know I sent a, okay. Well, anyway, obviously Erie was not as well known as some of the other settlements or as populous as others, such as Philadelphia, Scranton, Pittsburgh, some of the places that Dale mentioned. But Welsh settlers did start to move into that area in the late 1700s, early 1800s. And that is where my family's from. So I'm going to kind of talk about them to give you an idea of the immigration pattern there. They came to Erie County. There are no mines in the Erie area, but they came and sought seeking work as farmers and sailors. The area that they settled in Erie County is now commonly known as Wales. It's a rural community, which people refer to as Wales. I mentioned before, my ancestors were from there, and their immigration pattern was this. My ancestors were from northwestern Wales, in the Llanrwst area, if anybody knows approximately where that is. And in 1832, they went to Liverpool, where they got on a ship, the William Burns, and they headed across the Atlantic Ocean and arrived in the port of New York, which incidentally was the port of New York. There was no Ellis Island at that time. Again, this is 1832. And then from New York, it appears they headed up the Hudson Valley, up the Hudson River somehow to the eastern terminus of the Erie Canal, got on the Erie Canal, went across southern New York State to the western terminus in Buffalo, New York, and then worked their way down to Erie, Pennsylvania from that point. Some of that is speculation. However, it appears to be a pattern for the Welsh coming to that part of the country, to Erie, and one of the pieces of evidence that I went with that is I found an obituary for my great grandparents, and they mentioned that they stayed in Buffalo for a year on their journey across the United States to get to Erie. So it appears to be a legitimate route. Now, once they got to Erie, again, they settled in as farmers, sailors. My great grandfather, as a matter of fact, was killed in an boat and maritime accident on Lake Erie in 1849, where he was a sailor. He was a boiler tender, and the boiler blew up, and that was his occupation, sailor. Also, his son joined the United States Navy, and he served in the Navy for 20 years, lived in Erie. And during the Civil War, this is kind of interesting, his boat patrolled the Great Lakes, watching for Confederates working their way across the Great Lakes to the United States. There's no evidence that they ever intercepted any, but that was what he did during the Civil War. Now, in that area of Erie County, they started a church, officially known as the East Green Presbyterian Church, but very commonly called the Wales Church. That was started in 1849. I used to go to that church when I was young, and many of the records of that church are written in Welsh. And in some of the bulletins we'd get, I'd go to church and they'd say, well, the following week, the entire service is going to be in Welsh. So then again in 1849, they formed a cemetery, which was located right next to the church, but was independently chartered from the church. And it was on the site of an existing Congregationalist cemetery. That church, unfortunately, no longer exists, but the cemetery does. It's still active. And there are burials in that cemetery that date from 1827. Community also contained a school appropriately known as the Wales School. The building still stands, although it's a residence, and a post office. It was called the Boscobel Post Office. Some of you may recognize the name Boscobel. It's a name steeped in British history, British Isles history. It's also, there's a historic museum in the valley, in the Hudson Valley, which is known as the Boscobel House Museum. So that area of Erie County is still sometimes referred to as Wales. It's small. It never had a huge Welsh population. It was in the hundreds versus the thousands. But it's always interesting to go out and see some of those landmarks that still stand. And that's kind of a short story of the Welsh in northwestern Pennsylvania. So we've swept our way across Pennsylvania, miners, farmers, and sailors. And now we're up in the northwest corner. And now I'd just like to open the floor for any comments, questions. You can unmute your mic and ask a question. And anybody that can answer that question, feel free to answer it. And the floor is now open. Let's see, we have no questions in the chat box at this point.
I have a question. This is Luann in Arnold, Maryland.
Okay.
Could you comment on any Western Pennsylvania labor organizers that might have gained their experience in Welsh mines and come over? My grandmother's uncle, my great uncle, was born in Wales, worked in coal mines around Ebbw, came to America and became president of the Amalgamated Association of Iron and Steel Workers. And he was involved with tin plate. And then in 1889, President Harrison appointed him to be a consul to Great Britain in Birmingham, and his home was in Pittsburgh. And that's where he passed away. But I always knew we were Welsh coal miners and such, and that he had been somewhat well known.
Okay, thank you, Luann, and thank you for joining us. Dale, you probably know, unless somebody else can step in with a quick answer for Luann, Dale, you probably know more about the history of Pittsburgh in that area than of the three panelists.
Yeah, well, the one particular person is John L. Lewis, who was president of the Coal Miners Association. And when they had strikes and stuff, he'd be there to mediate and stuff. And he became a very popular person, John L. Lewis. but I'm not sure of anybody else in particular for the coal. I know up in the hard coal region, they did have a benevolent society that they formed to help mediate all these strikes and stuff, and fights and murders and things like that.
And Mr. Richards, did you say your family's in Sharon, Pennsylvania?
Yes, I was born in Sharon, Pennsylvania.
That's where my family's from. We should exchange emails somehow.
Born and raised in Sharon. My dad was born in Blairsville, and my other uncles are all up in the area, Sharpsville, Hermitage, that area.
Well, I will try to find an email for you through the society, and maybe we can exchange some information.
Where are you from?
Well, I'm from Wilmington, Delaware, but my grandmother was born in Sharon, and her father was born in Wales and came to Sharon. So that's where they lived their entire life until my grandmother married my grandfather in 1920. They went to Kentucky for a year, then Wilmington, Delaware, and that's where my family home is.
A light bulb just came on, Fred, for our Wales VA project. Do you think you might have anything related to your relative that you could let us know? We can scan it and all that stuff.
Okay, there are, for my relative that was the labor head of the Amalgamated Iron Workers, he has stuff all over the internet. He died in early 1918, so it's old stuff, but there's lots of biographies. I'd be glad to share some links and things about him.
You don't have family pictures or letters or things like that?
No pictures of him in the family, but I think there's one or two on the internet, and he's all over. If you do newspapers.com, you find some things about him. He was a great uncle, so he was my grandmother's uncle. Her father had more of the music and the quote cultural end of things. He taught them some nice refinements in life, whereas the one with the coal, he was definitely strictly business. But you know, as the head of a big organization, national organization, and that makes sense.
Yeah, okay. Well, maybe you can give me your email, or my email is reddragondale@yahoo. So
I've just put my email address in the chat.
Okay.
For everybody.
Yeah.
So if you want to send me any information about your relatives, then Dale mentioned the Wales, Pennsylvania project. We're always looking for material to put up. We use a website called the People's Collection Wales website, which is run by essentially the Welsh government through the National Library of Wales here in Aberystwyth, and also the Welsh Museum, and that's where we're putting up the material for the Wales Pennsylvania project. So if you've got any information, then do send it to me. And I see Jessica has also put up the email address of the St. David's Society of Pittsburgh.
Okay. I will make a semi-commitment that if you'd like, I could try to put together some facts and a summary, and maybe at some point turn that into an article of some kind for you.
That would be wonderful.
Fantastic.
Yeah. Very good. Thank you very much.
That would be beautiful. Yeah. Okay, great. Okay, so and we have Fred's and Jessica, as Fred mentioned, also posted the St. David's email address. So feel free to contact either of them, and we will certainly get the information.
Yeah, and Jessica's just put up a link to the People's Collection Wales website.
Great. Mm-hmm.
Again in the chat.
Okay. Great.
If you go into that website and you search for Wales PA, Wales-PA, then you'll find all the materials that we've put up on the site.
Okay. Anybody else have any comments there? I will mention, because Ray Firth mentioned this before it was kind of a pre-call discussion we had about, he was looking for some information about poorhouses in Wales. Ray, if you can hear me, do you want to unmute and repeat your question, and perhaps somebody can answer that?
On a similar presentation from England, they taught why people were emigrating. They talked about folks being paid to leave, poor people being paid to leave the country, that they would pay for their ship's fare to come across. And I'm not sure what I've stumbled across, but I have family who on the census, it looks like they were in the poorhouse and they had all the people in the poorhouse labeled as part of the census. And then that family came over, they were miners over there, lead miners, and they came over to Johnstown. And so I was just curious whether, they were encouraged by the government under the poor laws and got a ship's fee to come over, so they wouldn't be on the cost to the Welsh government, or just came over on their own. But I didn't understand the Welsh poor laws at that time. This was late 1800s.
I don't know who would have funded them, but I mean, as you say, I mean, the poorhouses were set up to house people who you couldn't fend for themselves, essentially, and I can imagine that the payments were made to enable them to emigrate to the United States and elsewhere. But I'm not sure who would have paid for them.
Well, I can
Thank
add
you.
a little bit to that, because I mentioned that my ancestors came over in 1832, and I have run into some cases right around that period of time. That was when Wales was going from an agricultural economy to an industrial economy. And a lot of the major landlords at that time were trying to consolidate the farms that they had on their estate just to try to make money out of them, because the smaller farms couldn't. So I have run into instances, I don't know if they were my particular great-great-grandparents, but instances where the landowner, the estate owner, paid to have one of his tenant farmers and family move to America, paid their fare, just so he could consolidate farms and hopefully turn them into larger, more profitable farms.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, so
They were tin miners. The husband, the couples, the family stayed together, and the father was a lead miner, excuse me. And his 13-year-old son was listed as a lead miner. So I was surprised with that to see them in the poorhouse, but it made, Thank you.
They had lead mines up in Cardigan, right? Cardiganshire?
Oh, yes. Yeah, there were lead mines just behind Aberystwyth, in the hills inland from Aberystwyth. There were quite a few lead mines. They tended to be most productive about the 1860s, 1870s, and then tended to go into decline. I think there was a collapse in the price being paid for lead. And it's quite possible that then these miners were essentially made redundant and ended up in the poorhouse.
Yeah, thank you.
That's where Jane Blank wrote a couple of her novels about the lead mines up there.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
I'm sorry, could you repeat the author?
Jane Blank, B-L-A-N-K.
Thank you.
And it's she wrote two novels. One's called The Dipping Pool, and the other is about Manteo, M-A-N-T-E-O. It's a mansion up there.
Adios.
That's the dipping pool. Ian has a dipping pool held up there.
Ian has all the props. Did you two guys get together and coordinate these things?
Just a coincidence. The stuff is right here. Yeah, I got the other one here too, but easy enough to look up online. Yeah.
What was the name of the other book, Ian? I can't remember that.
Shadow of Nanteos.
Yeah, Shadow of Manteo. Yeah.
Yeah, Chet. Hold on.
Okay, great.
Jessica,
Thank you.
Shadow of Nanteos.
Jessica,
There's in the dipping pool. Yeah, yeah.
Jessica just put the book titles and the author in the chat if you want to check your chat.
Good. That makes it a
Thank-
little easier. Yeah.
Thank you,
I
Jessica.
will.
Okay, Jessica's on the ball today.
Okay, and there's another thing in the chat, which maybe I'd like to, there was a posting from Neville Perry, which first of all, in an earlier posting, he wanted to assure everybody that to his knowledge, he is no relation to Joseph Perry. But he and his wife are Sue are very active in the St. David's Society of Pittsburgh. In fact, Sue is a board member of St. David's too. And Neville, you're saying that your great grandfather was board and a member of the Gorseth in Liverpool, and you have 2 of his chairs. Would you like to elaborate on that? Could you elaborate on that a little bit?
Yes, it wasn't my great grandfather, it was my grandfather. But that was in Liverpool. There was a very strong Welsh community in Liverpool and Bootle. And he was awarded 2 Bardic chairs in Eisteddfod. Now I know my family in Wales has one of the chairs, but the other one went missing, unfortunately, when another relative died. So, but he was a member of certainly the local Gorseth. Whether he was national, I'm not sure. Anyway.
Yeah. You
I have
know,
a question for anybody.
let me make one comment first there before I get away from that.
Okay,
Yeah, Neville, yeah, I have read in some history that Liverpool in the early 1900s, that 6 of their elementary schools taught only in Welsh. That was the only language that they used in Liverpool. So you're right, it was a very heavily Welsh populated city.
Yeah, well, my grandfather and his wife were both Welsh. They spoke Welsh at home, but they said, the family lives in England now, you will speak English. That's why I'm not bilingual.
Yeah, Liverpool was known as the capital of North Wales.
Yeah.
yeah,
Oh, really? Okay.
yeah,
I
yeah.
hadn't heard that.
Now I think North Wales is the retirement home for Liverpool.
Yes.
Neville,
Okay,
Yes.
Dale,
for
yeah.
anybody,
It's a better deal. Work in
Yeah.
Liverpool, retired.
the arch druid in the circle stood on a Logan stone. What is a Logan stone?
Oh.
I don't know.
Is that the stones with the strange drawings on them that they're finding?
Yeah,
Okay. Oh, well.
Do you know, Dale, or are you asking?
I know,
Oh,
I'm asking.
Please tell us.
yeah.
Okay, the Logan stone it's a rocking stone. It rocks back and forth. For what reason, I'm not sure. But the arch druid stands on the Logan stone. It's in the center of all the stones.
Okay. Eon, you have something to?
Yeah, it just reminds me of one thing. So it was typical or traditional at the beginning of every Eisteddfod festival to set up a circle of stones. And they still do it to this day in Wales at the beginning of the National Eisteddfod. And I think they're fake stones, if I'm not mistaken, or at least they're stones easily transportable from nearby. I'm not sure. It's they do it a little differently than they might have in the past, just to make it logistically easier. But I think even in Pittsburgh, if I'm not mistaken, from one of our earlier documents, we found out that they did a stone circle in Pittsburgh at the beginning of one Eisteddfod or another. Is that maybe somebody knows about that?
International Eisteddfod, they did it.
Yeah, in Pittsburgh.
In
Yeah,
Pittsburgh.
yeah, that's
And they had a harpist. The harpist is always there. She plays the song.
yeah. So even here we were doing that. That's
Yeah.
Yeah,
interesting.
yeah. And Neville has some, what is that, something to add to this, Neville?
Sorry, he's muted again.
Yeah.
Um,
This is,
no,
no,
that one.
this
Other
one.
side.
I'm sorry. That one is a photograph of my grandfather. And the photograph is an interesting book that I've got.
Huh.
The Welsh in Wales in the 20th century. Oh, no, in Merseyside.
Huh.
And it has a companion book,
It has a companion book.
You're Welsh.
Welsh, which again is
dear.
mirror image.
Great.
You guys are full of stuff, man.
Yeah.
Okay, any other questions?
All right, what was the name of William Penn's ship he came over on?
It looks like you've got a stump, Dale.
The Welcome.
Oh,
I tried to unmute myself. I missed it, but yes, the Welcome. Wilmington, Delaware. He actually landed in Old Newcastle, Delaware
Right,
first, then
right.
went to Philadelphia.
Yeah,
And lots of my ancestors I wrote in the chat are English and Welsh and came over very, very early in the 1600s. Many of them were Quakers. Some were not, but most were Quakers or English. But they became involved with Longwood Meeting House, which is outside of Longwood Gardens in Southeast Chester County, Pennsylvania. And the Longwood Meeting House became quite the place because it was one of the ones that helped, that was part of the schism between the Quakers. Some wanted only to have meeting to be your particular private devotion, and others wanted to talk the politics of the day and debate within the meeting, and that caused a break. And our relatives went with the break, and that break in that church, they were right on the border with Delaware, just a couple miles. They were very involved around the Kennett Square area with the Underground Railroad. So that was a really point of pride for us as we did ancestry research, and we had known a little bit about it. We visit their graves on occasion, and then we found out we also have Maryland relatives who weren't the good guys. If you have Maryland ancestors, you likely have the slaveholding ancestors too. But being associated with that Quaker and being from northern Wilmington and southeast Pennsylvania has been a point of pride for our family.
great. Okay, good.
does anybody know what the symbol of the Gorset is?
Where do you get these questions, Dale?
I was reading this book. This book right here, the Royal Blue Book. This is what from the Internationalist Edbit in July of 1913. Very interesting reading. Fred wants it, huh?
And where did you get that book, Dale?
This is from the lady that Ian contacted in New Jersey.
Okay.
Yeah.
Susan.
Yeah.
Gimpridge,
Yeah.
yeah. Somebody-
I was kinda
She just
hoping
read.
I was kind of hoping she'd join us today for a while. Ian, have you heard anything from her at all?
Not recently, no. I thought she might come on today, but it wasn't 100% clear. But yeah, she reached out to us, and I'll just say only so much since we're on the recording, but she basically offered this old book to us that happened to be in her possession. Didn't have a use for it anymore, and we said we would gladly take it. Yeah, it's we're always interested in historic books, documents, photos, dealing with Welsh immigration in Pennsylvania, and this was pretty good find. Yeah.
Yes, it was. Yeah, yeah.
There's the symbol.
Oh, here we go.
There's the symbol. You see it?
Okay, a little closer, Dale.
Up a bit.
Yeah, up on your, there you go.
3 straight lines.
Oh, I can. Yeah, let me.
Reaching to
pull
the
it up.
sun.
I think I can pull it up here.
You know, it's great. Well, Ian's pulling that up, but we really have a pretty good geographical dispersion here. I wish we could have gotten Suzanne from Scranton. Ah, okay.
Yeah.
Is that it? Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was just kind of filling in there, but I mentioned before we have what, 1, 2, 3, at least 3 people on here from Connecticut.
Oh, we have more than that.
Emma Fitzgerald, Susan Davis,
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
And
Susan, sit there.
Mary Beth Brown.
Oh, okay. Mary Beth, thank you for joining us. Yeah, yeah. We actually have a person that joined us from Indiana. A couple people from California. Those are members of my family. It's good to have them. My son from Indiana, my son and daughter-in-law from California. Glad that you guys could join us. Hey, Keith. And Hayden Thomas has just jumped on. Hello, Hayden. You're muted.
Heidi, do you know Susan Stitt?
Oh,
Susan,
yeah.
say hello.
She's there. She's here.
Oh, she
She's
is?
with us.
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
hello,
she's- yeah,
Susan.
Yeah, she is.
Okay, hi, Susan.
Hi, everybody.
Hello,
There you
Susan.
are.
Okay.
You were a bowl of daffodils before.
Yeah.
Brooke left. Okay.
Susan is a great genealogist. Anybody that has any questions, ask Susan.
We have a wonderful Welsh genealogy group that meets twice a week on Zoom, twice a month on Zoom. And it's been terrific during the pandemic.
She's helped me a little bit.
Oh, David, still looking for Richard.
Yes.
I'm still looking too.
Yeah, yeah. You know, that's Richard Williams, who many of you know I've been searching for 21 years. My great-great-grandfather that came over and got killed in a maritime accident on Lake Erie. And my wife said that he was a criminal and he changed his name and we'll never find him.
That's possible.
Good
Not
luck.
surprising, Dave.
Could you elaborate on the Welsh group you mentioned? Is it open?
We have, well, we used to meet in person once a month before the pandemic. So we moved on to Zoom and we meet twice a month to do Welsh genealogy. And there's about 15 people on the email list. But we usually have about 8 or 10 people every session. And we research particular things or we have just a general discussion. All sorts of different things, but Welsh genealogy.
You guys do some great work up there.
Yeah.
Hi, David. This is Emma.
Hello, Emma. This
I
is-
enjoyed it very much.
I'm so glad you could join us. Emma is a long lost cousin of Heidi, just discovered up in Connecticut. And
Oh.
we've been exchanging a lot of information and Susan has been helping us out. Susan Sitt. So yes, good you could join us, Emma.
Emma's great
Yes.
great grandparents are David and my great 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 grandparents.
Hmm.
We have a world traveler with us on, don't we?
Hey,
Uh,
hey, Dale. Hey, Dale.
What?
I believe that book you were showing about the blue book from the Stedford in Pittsburgh.
Yeah.
I believe I had that online a few years ago. I don't know if you guys remember.
It
When
is
I brought that
available
to class.
online. Yeah, it is available online.
Yeah,
If-
this, is
if-
a very, this is a very old one.
Yeah, you can get a copy of it through Forgotten Books. And
Yeah.
so Forgotten Books will give you, they take like PDF pictures of all the pages. It
That's-
wouldn't be as nice as the original, but it's easy to get that book
yeah,
on Forgotten Books.
Just needs bound.
So do you, Dave, or Dale.
I need bound.
There's a question here from Sandy that I'm not sure I understand. Who is like us, or have anyone put who is like us? Nobody. Is that a book you're asking about?
Actually, I have an article. I'm sure it was from the Ninai of a documentary film on the Welsh in Northeast Pennsylvania. I can't pronounce the Welsh, but precede Felnin Neb, or who is like us? Nobody. From the Welsh Cultural Endeavor of Northeastern Pennsylvania. I'm wondering if it's available online or if anyone knows about it.
Oh.
Can anybody know that and answer
No.
to that?
It's an article from Ninai. It started
Well,
out that
it's originally, and I'm sorry, I don't have the date from Ninai, but the article is from a special correspondent and it announces a documentary film on the Welsh in Northeast Pennsylvania reaches wide distribution.
Okay.
And the people in the picture are Dr. Richard Loomis, Anthony T.P. Brooks, and George Horwat.
Okay.
George,
And that
not
was in,
George.
the signing was at the Barnes and Noble in Wilkes-Barre.
Okay. Yeah. So I recognize one or two of those names. So probably it was within the last, I don't know, 10, 20 years or so, if I had to guess.
Well, it's more recently, I would say more than 10, because I haven't subscribed to the Ninai for that long.
Okay. Okay.
But here's a website. I don't know if it's related, but it's Welsh Culture, NEPA.org.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Northeastern PA. Yeah.
Okay.
I guess that's the local group up there. And that's.
Oh,
probably
okay.
Yeah, they produced a video a few years ago of the history of the Welsh in Northeast PA.
Oh, okay.
And this is it. I'm sure this is it.
Oh, okay. Okay, I've heard of that video.
Yeah.
And has anyone tracked down the Pennsylvania ancestors through their land tracts with ancestortracts.com for Pennsylvania? I picked this up at a genealogy conference a few years ago, but I've never tracked anything down. So it would be called ancestortracts.com. Pinpoint their land even before the 1790 census, early landowners of Pennsylvania, a series of county atlases and CDs with an every name index.
Okay, good. Another question just came up, and we can get back to that subject, but Anne is asking, Sue, is there an email to join the Zoom genealogy group? Can you post that? Do you want to post it?
Yes, I can put it in the chat.
Okay, yes, yeah,
Okay.
great, thank you. Okay, I didn't mean to throw us off, although I guess I did. Any other
I want to
questions?
compliment the Wales collection for including the 100 years of Welsh Calvinistic Methodism in America, because it includes the writings of the man who was a minister in the Presbyterian Church in Oshkosh, Wisconsin. And that's the church that, that's not the Welsh church I attended, but it is where I did my catechism. So if anyone is interested in that book, it certainly has a lot of information on all the various states of that had Calvinistic Methodist churches.
Yeah, yes, that book is a fount of information for genealogists.
Yes, it is.
Lots and lots of names.
As is Fred, a font of knowledge and help for anything that has anything to do with People's Collection Wales. He lives within walking distance of the National Library of Wales, knows most of the people there. If you have a question that you're really stumped on, just email Fred and he can get you an answer quicker than anybody I know. And if he can't get it there, he can just walk up the hill and ask.
Well, unfortunately, at the moment, I can't because of COVID. The National Library is closed. But hopefully, fairly soon, it will all be back to normal.
Yeah, I think we all hope that. I'm certainly missing not going there.
Yeah.
Okay, any other questions or comments at all?
Just real quick, I just put in the chat, I found a welshculture.org link to what Sandy was talking about for the Who Is Like Us Nobody with a DVD. I'm still looking around for if it would possibly be the show online, but that might be a hint for people to look on their own when you're done today.
Fantastic. Good.
I just had one comment. I mentioned my grandfather, Robert Parry. He moved to Liverpool or Bootle from just outside Pwllheli. And it was probably a bigger move for him to move to Liverpool than it was for me to move from Liverpool to the States.
Well, yeah.
You know, that was 130, well, maybe 150 years ago now, and moving to a new culture and a new language.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Because coming from the Pwllheli area, he was probably, well, he'd certainly be a native Welsh speaker, and whether he was bilingual or not might be questionable. I don't know.
There would have been a lot of Welsh speakers in Liverpool at the time, so
yes,
it wouldn't have been so alien.
Yeah, he would have immediately found a Welsh Baptist chapel.
This is Ray. I wanted to thank you folks who organized this. This was very, very productive.
Very
So
nice.
thank you for putting us together. And Dave, you might want to mention again that this will be on YouTube for anybody who may have missed that earlier.
Yeah, thanks, Ray. Yeah, we were recording today. I did mention at the beginning, I know some of you joined us since then, but the video will be posted on our YouTube channel at Wales, Pittsburgh. Jessica, is that? I think that's, anyway.
Welsh in Pittsburgh or
Well,
something.
yeah, something like that is our YouTube channel. So
I think we're putting it on the Facebook. as well.
It'll take me a little while to get it processed on YouTube, but as soon as I do, I will put the link up on our Facebook, our Twitter, and probably on our website as well. But if you go to YouTube, I think you can just search it as Pittsburgh Welsh. I really just established this just this year, just a few weeks ago, actually. So, but I'll put up a link to that as well in the comment.
This is Luann. When you say you may put it on the website too, I would always request that because I worked for the military and I do not do Facebook under any.
Yeah. And I don't blame you. I don't blame you at all. Yeah, I try to put things up on the website, and
I am
certainly not everybody wants to be social media.
Yeah, well, it's gotten to the point I actually call businesses and tell them they just lost a sale because they don't put things on their website and they're all going to Facebook. But then I'm a bit of a nudge. So, but thank you. That would be helpful on the website.
That's because you're from Sharon.
I'm totally suspicious of my fellow man and don't trust them one bit.
This has been a great session today. I think we've had a really great cross section of people, both interest-wise and geographically. And so I think if the people that did all the work to help get this set up, like Fred and Dale and Jessica and Bob and Ian, I think this is something we ought to probably think about doing again.
Yeah, absolutely.
Definitely. Yeah, I think that's been the conversation. And I personally wanted to thank David, Fred, and Dale for presenting today, and Jessica for hosting the event on Zoom and doing a lot of other work. Yeah, I personally hope people enjoyed this, and I would certainly favor doing more of these in the future. Yeah.
Sounds good.
It's very nice. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you.
The open bar, everybody.
Thank you, everybody. Bye-bye.
Thank
you.
Bye.
Bye. Bye, Beth. Good to see you.
Bye, yes,
Hi, Beth. Nice meeting you.
same here.
Okay, who's writing the article on here?
What?
Who's writing the article for Nenai?
That'll be you, Dale.
Flip a coin.
You brought it up.
Like you're the scribe, yeah.
You send me some information, I'll write it.
I took some notes too. I
Well,
can.
yeah,
I can-
and there's also the recording, Dale. which
Oh.
we can-
Yeah.
we
Yeah,
can
going
send to you.
back and watching that is really
Yeah.
useful.
Yeah, So,
Okay.
In
Okay,
fact, I am going
okay.
to stop the recording right now. So,
okay. thanks,
like I said, it'll
everybody.
take a little while to process. It'll probably be a good, yeah, it might be like tomorrow or the day after.
Oh, geez, that's very quick.